"Get up, you freak. Nobody wants you here." The words sliced through the low hum of the roadside bar like a blade through silk, sharp, deliberate, and soaked in cheap liquor and hate. They weren't just an insult, they were a challenge, a declaration of war in a place meant for peace. Every head turned toward the source. Jake, a mountain of a man, face flushed red, veins standing out on his thick neck as he towered over a lone woman sitting in the corner booth. Then, as if pulled by gravity, all eyes shifted to her. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up. She just kept tracing the rim of her glass with one finger, calm as still water. Her quietness against his fury filled the room with a strange, heavy tension of the kind that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. Her name was Lena, a woman who had drifted into town like dust on the Kansas wind. She'd shown up one rainy evening, her old sedan limping into a town that had stopped caring about newcomers long ago. She rented a room above a shuttered hardware store and worked mornings at the Sunrise Diner, a fitting name for the only place where her rare, fleeting smile appeared. She spoke little, moved efficiently, lived quietly. To most, she was a mystery waiting for someone else to solve. Maybe a runaway, maybe just unlucky, but to Jake, she was something else entirely. Jake had once been the town's golden boy, a high school star who never found a second act. His trophy still sat behind the counter of his father's failing auto shop, gathering dust. The muscles had softened, the glory faded, and the bitterness filled the void. And Lena's silence, her refusal to shrink, to play the background role, ignited something ugly in him. That night, he'd been drinking hard, nursing his failures like old friends. Every slight, every unpaid bill, every fading cheer from his past boiled inside him until it needed somewhere to go. And there she was, quiet, calm, untouchable. He took it as an insult. He started with low mutters about people taking jobs, then louder shouts about knowing your place, until finally, the dam broke. He slammed his fist on her table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "I'm talking to you," he snarled. "You think you're too good to answer me?" Lena finally looked up. The motion was slow, deliberate, her gaze steady, eyes dark and calm. No fear, no anger, just a broken bar stillness. And in that stillness, Jake saw himself, bloated, red-faced, pathetic. The reflection hit harder than any insult could. "I said get up," he roared, spit flying. The bar went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to stop mid-song. Roy, the bartender, tried to step in. "Leave her be, Jake." Jake didn't hear him. His ego had already taken control. "She ain't no lady, Roy. She's a stain. Thinks she can come here, take our jobs, act like she belongs." He leaned closer, his breath sour with beer. "You understand English, sweetheart?" That was the moment. The air shifted. Lena's voice came quiet and precise. "I understand you perfectly." The calm confidence in her tone didn't just silence Jake, it threw him off balance. He wasn't used to calm. He was used to fear. He grabbed her arm. That touch sealed his fate. What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Her hand came up, catching his wrist, not in panic, but in control. One fluid turn, one efficient twist of her hips, and the room filled with a sharp, sickening pop. Jake screamed. He stumbled backward, clutching his arm, eyes wide with disbelief. His mind couldn't process what his body was feeling, pain, loss of control, humiliation. And Lena stood up, slowly, calmly. The silence around her deepened. She didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like something elemental, a force, not a person. Jake, red with rage and pain, charged at her. A blind animal driven by shame. She didn't meet force with force. She moved with him, smooth as a dancer, sidestepping his attack. His punch hit nothing but air, his body overextended. In one clean motion, her boot snapped upward, a precise, devastating strike. The crack of bone echoed through the bar. Jake's leg folded beneath him like paper. His scream tore through the silence, raw and animal. Still, he tried one last desperate swing from the floor, a wild, broken man trying to claw back his pride. Lena's hands blurred. One deflected the strike, the other delivered a small, sharp blow beneath his jaw. No drama, just precision. Jake dropped instantly. Lights out. 30 seconds. That's all it took. The bar remained frozen, the air heavy with disbelief. The only sound was the faint jingle of the door as Lena walked out. The silence she left behind was louder than any shout Jake had ever made. When people finally moved, it was like waking from a trance. The bartender called for help. Others stared at Jake, a crumpled mess on the floor, his limbs bent wrong, his pride shattered beyond repair. No one spoke the truth out loud. They couldn't. It was too raw, too final. By the time the paramedics arrived, Jake's legend had already begun to die, replaced by a story that would echo through the town for years. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became myths. Some said Lena had vanished through the walls. Others swore she was a government agent. But those who had seen her eyes that night knew better. She wasn't a ghost or a hero. She was something real, the quiet truth that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. In the months that followed, Lena stayed on a little while longer, but the diner became unbearable. Every look, every whispered story made her a prisoner of her own silence. So one autumn morning, she was gone. No goodbye, no trace, just the echo of what she'd left behind, a lesson burned into the town's collective soul. True strength doesn't shout, it waits. And when the storm comes, it moves swiftly, silently, and with absolute purpose. Jake's scream tore through the silence like a dying animal, sharp and raw. His eyes widened in disbelief as his body betrayed him. His arm hung uselessly at his side, his breath coming out in ragged bursts. He stumbled backward, clutching his wrist, but the pain was only the beginning. Lena stood, slow and unhurried, her movements measured, her presence suddenly filling the entire room. The stillness that surrounded her wasn't weakness anymore, it was command. Every step she took forward seemed to pull the air tighter. Her posture was effortless, balanced. Anyone who had ever seen combat would have recognized it instantly as the stance of someone trained not to fight, but to end fights. Jake, humiliated and burning with fury, lunged again. His roar was wordless, animalistic, a desperate attempt to reclaim his power, to prove that brute force still meant something. But Lena didn't flinch. As he charged, she moved like water, flowing, pivoting, guiding his rage past her. His fist met empty air. His momentum betrayed him, and then her boot met his knee with a precise, surgical strike. The sound, that awful, splintering crack, froze every soul in the bar. Jake's massive frame collapsed, folding inward in a grotesque twist. His scream this time was higher, raw, pain stripped of pride. He fell, clutching his leg, gasping for air like a man drowning on dry land. But even broken, his ego clawed for the illusion of control. He swung one last wild, desperate arm at her, a flailing act of denial. Lena didn't step back. Her hands became a blur, one deflecting his strike with a grace that seemed almost gentle, the other darting forward in a short, tight motion, a strike so fast it barely existed. A dull thud followed, small but final. Jake's head jerked, his eyes went glassy, and all at once, the fight, the noise, the chaos, the man himself ended. His body dropped with a hollow thump that seemed to echo forever. The bar was silent. No music, no voices, not even breath, just the hum of the neon light above the counter, buzzing faintly like an insect trapped in amber. 30 seconds. That's all it had taken. 30 seconds to dismantle a man, a myth, a monster, and to show an entire town what silence could really do. Lena didn't look back. She simply placed a few crumpled bills on the table, straightened her jacket, and walked out. The door creaked. The small bell above it jingled. Then she was gone. For a long time, nobody moved. Then someone finally exhaled. The sound was loud, almost violent, in the fragile quiet. Roy, the bartender, was the first to act. He made the call in a low, steady voice. "Bad fall," he said. Everyone heard him. Everyone agreed. Because saying the truth aloud, that a quiet woman had just shattered a man who'd once thought himself untouchable, was too much for their small town minds to process. When the paramedics came, their radios crackling and gloves snapping, the truth became impossible to ignore. Jake's injuries weren't bar brawl wounds. They were destruction, structural, permanent. And as the stretcher rolled past, something shifted in the eyes that watched him go. Guilt, respect, awe, fear, a quiet understanding that they had all helped build him, brick by brick, through their silence. That night, the last stop bar became something else, a shrine, a cautionary tale. By morning, the story was already spreading, a twisted, exaggerated, mythologized. In one version, Lena broke Jake's arm with a finger. In another, she was a ghost, or a soldier, or an angel of vengeance. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was the lesson she left behind. Lena stayed for a few months more, her presence now sacred, untouchable. But the pitying glances, the whispers, the weight of what everyone now saw when they looked at her, it was too much. So one autumn morning, she was gone, her apartment spotless, her life folded away like a story that had been told to its end. But she left something behind, an echo that would never fade, a reminder that real strength doesn't roar, it doesn't threaten or demand, it waits, a quiet, disciplined, patient hand until the world forces it to rise. And when it does, a broken bar, it changes everything.